Today we'll be discussing the EPF Act 1952 and its associated schemes, which are crucial for our employee benefits framework.
If you're a salaried employee in India, there's this huge, complex system working behind the scenes, shaping your entire financial future. It's mandatory, it can be confusing, but it is absolutely crucial to understand. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and demystify the Employees Provident Fund, or EPF. So what's the answer? Well, it all goes back to a single law from 1952. And here's the key thing. It's not just one savings account. It's actually an integrated social security net designed to protect you and your family at all these different stages of life.
You know, when we say PFF, we're usually talking about a trio of schemes that all work together. The best way to think about it is like a three-pillar safety net for your financial security.
Okay, so Pillar 1 is the EPF. This is your main retirement nest egg, that big lump sum you get at the end. Pillar 2 is the EPS, which makes sure you get a steady pension check every single month for the rest of your life. And Pillar 3 is EDLI, which is basically a life insurance policy for your family. So you see, it's your savings, your pension, and your insurance all rolled into one. So this all sounds great, but where does the money come from to fund this powerful system? Let's follow the money and break down how it flows from your salary into these different accounts every month.
The basic rule seems simple enough, right? You contribute 12% of your wages and your employer matches it with another 12%. But, and this is a really important but, it's not that straightforward. That employer contribution doesn't all end up in the same pot.
Okay, so here's the twist. Your entire 12% contribution, that goes straight into your EPF savings account. Simple. But your employer's 12% gets split. A big chunk of it, 8.33%, gets diverted to fund your future pension, up to a max of 1,250 rupees a month. Whatever's left over, that 3.67%, then goes into your EPF savings. This is a super important detail that honestly, a lot of people miss.
And believe it or not, we're still not done. Your employer actually pays more than 12%. On top of their share, they also pay an extra 0.5% for your life insurance and another 0.5% for admin fees. So while you're paying 12%, your employer is actually contributing quite a bit more to keep the whole system running for you.
All right, enough with the mechanics. Let's shift gears and talk about what really matters to you, how your money grows, and more importantly, how you can actually get your hands on it before you retire. So, your EPF account doesn't just sit there. It earns compound interest. For the 2024-25 financial year, that rate is a pretty sweet 8.25%, and it's tax exempt. This is the magic ingredient that over decades turns all those small monthly contributions into a really substantial fund for retirement. But here's the thing. You don't always have to wait until you're 58. The system is actually designed to be a flexible financial tool. It allows you to take out what they call advances, which are basically partial, non-refundable withdrawals for major life events.
So what can you use it for? All sorts of things. You can get an advance for medical treatments, for your kids' education or their wedding, or even to buy or build a house. Now, each reason has its own rules, like how long you need to have been working. And get this, once you're over 54, you can pull out up to 90% of your balance to help you get ready for retirement.
Okay, let's flip the script. We've talked about the employee's side, but what about the employer? For them, this isn't just about cutting a check. It's a really complex and legally binding duty to stay compliant.
And right at the heart of all that complexity is this one term, basic wages. Why? Because every single contribution is calculated based on this number. But here's the tricky part. The law is weirdly written. It defines basic wages by listing what it isn't, which, as you can imagine, has created a massive legal gray area for decades.
And then came the game changer. The Supreme Court established what's known as the universality test. Basically, it says that if an allowance is paid to everyone all the time, it doesn't matter what you call it in the pay slip, it's going to be counted as basic wages for PF. This really put a stop to companies getting creative with salary structures to lower their PF contributions. It's a huge deal. So, how do employers actually report all this every month? They use a system called the Electronic Child Income Return, or ECR. It's a really strict 4-step digital dance.
First, they have to prepare a specific data file. Then they upload it, and the government system checks it in real time. Once it's validated, they have to formally approve it, and only then can they generate the payment form and pay by the 15th of the month.
Now, with a process that rigid, you just know there have to be consequences for getting it wrong or being late. And you would be right. The penalties for non-compliance are pretty severe.
And there's been a huge change here just recently. Before June 2024, the longer you delayed, the higher the penalty rate. Now it's a flat 1% of the overdue amount per month. Now that might sound better, but it actually makes short-term delays way more expensive than they used to be. The message from the government is crystal clear. Even a small delay is a big deal now.
Even the whole inspection process has gotten a modern makeover. Gone are the days of confrontational, surprise audits. The new model is all about technology. They call it nudge and watch. The system automatically spots potential defaulters and sends them an email or SMS, a little nudge. If that doesn't work, it escalates to a formal e-verification. Physical inspections, they're now the absolute last resort, only for people who refuse to cooperate.
So when you put all of these pieces together, the new digital filing, the tougher penalties, the nudge approach, it all points to a massive shift. We need to zoom out and look at what this new digital reality of EPF compliance really means.
I mean, just look at the full scope of what an employer has to do. This isn't about mailing some paperwork once a year anymore. It is about managing a continuous, nonstop flow of perfectly accurate digital information every single day without fail.
This quote absolutely nails it. The employer's job has changed. They're no longer just a middleman passing information along. They are now a data fiduciary. That's a fancy way of saying they are legally on the hook for making sure every single piece of employee data they submit is flawless. Because here's the bottom line. In this new world, compliance isn't some manual check that might happen down the road. It's a real-time digital audit that happens every single month when that ECR file gets uploaded. The system itself has become the primary enforcer, and it doesn't forgive errors. Which brings us to our final thought. For employees, this new system is great. It means faster, more accurate service. But for employers, it poses a pretty serious challenge and a big question. In an era where the system itself is the auditor, is your data clean enough to pass that digital audit, not just once a year, but every single month?
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into the weeds of the Employees Provident Funds and Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1952.
That's right.
Now, for a lot of people, maybe for you listening, this act might just feel like, that line item on your payslip, a deduction.
Just a compulsory savings thing, yeah.
Exactly. You think PF, you think retirement savings.
Yeah.
Simple. But the source material we've looked at, it paints a much bigger, more dynamic picture.
It really does. We're talking about a huge Social Security cornerstone here. It's complex, multi-layered, and crucially, it's changing fast. Technology's driving a massive shift.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's not just one scheme, is it? It's actually three pillars working together.
Precisely. A tripartite structure. And if you're an employer, understanding these three is absolutely fundamental to, staying compliant today.
Okay, let's quickly lay those out because they do very different things. First up, the main one people think of, the Employees Provident Fund, the EPF scheme itself from 52.
Right. That's your core retirement savings, your lump sum. It's a defined contribution setup. What you put in, plus what your employer puts in, grows with compound interest. Tax-efficient pot at the end.
Then the second pillar, maybe the trickier one, the Employees Pension Scheme, or EPS, that came in 95.
Yeah, trickier is a good word. This isn't about a lump sum. It's designed to give you a monthly income, lifelong, after you retire.
Like a traditional pension.
Exactly. But here's the catch. It's a defined benefit. It promises a certain payout based on a formula. Yet, it's funded by a defined contribution, and crucially, that contribution is capped.
Oh, okay. So there's a potential mismatch there.
A huge one. That tension, that structural fragility is something we definitely need to unpack later. It's key.
And the third pillar, often overlooked, maybe.
Probably. The Employees Deposit Linked Insurance Scheme, EDLI, from 76. Think of it as group term life insurance.
Funded by.
Entirely by the employer. It provides a lump sum to the employee's family if, God forbid, they pass away while still working. It's an extra safety net beyond just the EPF balance.
Okay, 3 pillars. Got it. So our mission today, looking at all these recent updates and changes, what's the core story?
It's really about a paradigm shift. Compliance used to be, let's face it, a bit reactive. Paperwork, bureaucracy, maybe some follow-up later.
Right.
Now, it's automated, it's digital, it's an enforcement ecosystem that operates in real time, and our sources are crystal clear. This massively increases the risk for employers. Data accuracy, timeliness, they're not just nice to haves anymore, they are absolutely non-negotiable.
And that leads us straight into the main tension we need to explore, right? 2 big challenges keep coming up.
Definitely. First, there's this almost hidden financial risk baked into how a lot of companies structure salaries. We call it the basic wages landmine. It can blow up into huge retrospective liabilities.
Okay, that sounds serious. And the second?
The second is just the sheer speed and certainty of penalties now. The new digital system, it's immediate, it's automated, the margin for error, it's essentially disappeared.
Okay, let's build this from the ground up. The money side. How are contributions calculated? Who pays what? Where does it go?
So the standard rate is symmetrical. It's 12%.
12% from both sides.
Exactly. 12% from the employee, matched by 12% from the employer. But, and this is crucial, it's 12% of PF wages.
Ah, okay. Not just total salary. What counts as PF wages?
The definition is quite specific in the Act. It's your basic wages plus any dearness allowance, DA, and also something called retaining allowance, if applicable.
So things like HRA, bonus, overtime, they're generally out.
According to the literal text of the Act, yes. But we'll see how that plays out in reality very soon. Now, there are some exceptions to the 12% rate.
Like what?
Well, if you're a brand new business or maybe an industrial unit that's officially declared sick, or even just smaller places with fewer than 20 employees, sometimes the rate can drop to 10% for both sides. But honestly, 12% is the standard you should assume.
Right, and the employee's 12%. That's straightforward.
Pretty much. It goes directly into their personal EPF account. That's their money, gross tax-free, they can inherit it, it's their lump sum building up. Simple enough.
But the employer's 12%. That's where it gets a bit more complicated. You mentioned a split.
Exactly. This is really critical, especially for understanding the tension side. The employer's 12% contribution gets split. The bulk of it, 8.33% of the employee's PF wages, gets diverted.
Diverted where?
Into the employee's pension scheme, the EPS. But there's a cap on this diversion.
Okay, a ceiling.
Yes. The statutory wage ceiling for this 8.33% calculation is currently set at 15,000 rupees per month.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I've got this. If I earn, say, 50,000 rupees a month, my PF wages are 50K.
Right.
The employer contributes 12% of that, which is 6,000 rupees. But the amount going into my pension pot, the EPS, is only 8.33% of the ceiling.
Precisely. 8.33% of 15,000 rupees.
Which is 12,250 rupees.
Exactly. So only 12,250 rupees of that 6,000 from the employer goes into the EPS each month. That's the maximum funding the pension scheme gets per employee per month from the employer's side.
And the rest, the difference between the 6,000 total and the 12,250 for EPS.
That remaining amount, 4,750 rupees in your example, goes into your personal EPF savings account. It tops up your lump sum.
Ah, okay. That's a really common misunderstanding, isn't it?
Yeah.
People assume the full 12% match goes straight to their savings.
Very common. But no, that 8.33% diversion to EPS up to the ceiling is mandatory.
So when we talk about the employer's total cost, it's actually a bit more than just their 12% contribution, isn't it?
Yes, slightly more. Because on top of matching the 12%, the employer also has to pay for the EDLI life insurance and the admin costs.
What are those rates?
It's another 0.5% towards EDLI and another 0.5% for the EPF administrative charges. And these are generally calculated on that same capped wage base, the 15,000 rupees were applicable.
So add it all up, the employer's total hit is closer to 13% of the capped salary.
Roughly, yes. Around 13% is a good ballpark figure for the total statutory outlay for the employer.
Let's quickly touch on who has to be in this scheme. Mandatory membership.
Right. It's mandatory for any employee earning up to 15,000 rupees per month at the time they join the company.
At the time they join. What if they get promoted later and earn much more?
Doesn't matter. Once you're in for good. Membership continues even if your salary goes way past that $15,000 ceiling later on.
And what if someone joins already earning, say, $20,000 above the ceiling?
They can still join, but it's voluntary. It requires mutual consent. Both the employee and employer have to agree, and you need specific permission from the Assistant Provident Fund Commissioner, the APFC.
Sounds like extra paperwork.
It is. It adds administrative complexity. And honestly, it can sometimes create a bit of friction, maybe a feeling of unfairness if you have two people doing similar jobs paid the same, but one's in PF and the other isn't, just because of what they earned on day one.
Okay, now we wade into what you call the legal minefield. That 12% contribution hinges entirely on the definition of basic wages and the Act's definition. Well, it seems to leave a lot out.
It does, on the surface. The statutory definition is subtractive. It lists what isn't basic wages. Things like house rent allowance, HRA, overtime pay, bonuses, commissions. They're explicitly excluded.
Which sounds like it gives employers a clear path to minimize PF contributions, right?
Yeah.
Just structure the salary with a low basic and lots of allowances.
And for decades, that's exactly what many companies did. It became a widespread strategy. Keep the official basic wage low, maybe call large, regular chunks of pay, special allowance or conveyance allowance or some kind of flexi pay. The goal, reduce that 12% PF hit.
But the courts didn't buy it.
Not buying it is an understatement. The judiciary, especially the Supreme Court, has been absolutely relentless on this. They've consistently said, we don't care what label you put on the money.
They look past the name tag.
Completely. They exercise their power to pierce the veil of nomenclature. They ignore the label, special allowance, whatever, and they look at the actual nature of the payment. How does it function in the employee's overall pay?
And they developed a test for this. You mentioned the universality test.
Exactly. This is the core legal principle that trips up so many seemingly compliant salary structures. It's the benchmark the courts use to reclassify an allowance as part of basic wages for PF purposes.
Okay, let's break down this universality test.
Yeah.
What makes an allowance likely to be reclassified? What are the criteria?
The courts generally look for three things. One, is the allowance paid universally? Meaning, is it paid to all employees, or at least a very broad category of them, without much individual variation?
Okay, universality, what's two?
Two, is it paid regularly, like every single month, as a fixed, predictable component of the salary?
Right, universality, regularity.
Right.
And the third?
Three, is it paid necessarily? Is it essentially integral to the employee receiving their total agreed upon compensation package? Or is it genuinely linked to some specific variable output or condition?
Such as?
Well, things like genuine production incentives tied to measurable output, or properly documented overtime hours, or actual expenses being reimbursed based on bills. If the allowance isn't clearly and demonstrably linked to something like that, if it's just paid routinely to everyone,
Right.
then the courts are likely to say it's just part of the basic pay, regardless of the name.
Precisely. If it walks like basic pay and quacks like basic pay, it's basic pay for PF calculation.
Can you give a classic example? Something that often gets cut.
The absolute classic is the generic special allowance, or maybe cash allowance. Imagine an employer sets the basic wage artificially low, say 12,000 rupees. But then everyone also gets a fixed special allowance of, say, 40,000 rupees every month, no questions asked, not tied to performance.
The court looks at that 40,000. Is it paid universally? Yes. Regularly? Yes. Necessarily part of the total pay package? Yes. Is it linked to specific output or reimbursement? No. So the court says, your actual basic wage for PF calculation isn't 12,000, it's the full 52,000.
And this is where that retrospective financial risk you mentioned earlier just explodes, isn't it?
Absolutely detonates. Because if an EPFO audit or a court ruling forces this reclassification, the consequences are immediate and severe.
What happens?
You get hit with a demand for the contribution shortfall for every single affected employee, and potentially going back years, maybe 5, maybe even 10 years in some cases.
Wow. And that's not just the employer's share they missed.
Oh no, it's the employer's 12% and the employee's 12% that wasn't deducted correctly. And the employer is generally on the hook to pay both shares retrospectively.
Can they recover the employee's share from the employees?
Legally, it's incredibly difficult, often impossible, especially for ex-employees. So the employer ends up footing the entire bill for the shortfall. We're talking potentially massive unbudgeted amounts.
And it doesn't stop there, right? There are penalties on top.
Oh yes, mandatory penalties. It's a double whammy. First, there's interest. Non-waivable simple interest under Section 7Q. Currently 12% per annum. This is meant to compensate the fund for the income lost because the money wasn't paid on time.
Okay, 12% interest.
Yeah.
And the second penalty.
That's the punitive one. Penal damages under Section 14B. These are meant to punish the default. And when you add the principal shortfall, the 12% interest compounded over years, and the Section 14B damages,
It can become a crippling amount.
absolutely staggering. We've seen cases where demands run into crores, tens of crores, even hundreds of crores for very large companies. It fundamentally shifts salary structuring from just an HR admin task into a core corporate financial risk management issue.
Okay, let's pivot now to the pension scheme itself, the EPS. You mentioned earlier it has this sort of built-in fragility. Can you expand on that actuarial tension?
Yeah, the tension is really baked into its design. Remember, EPS is a defined benefit scheme. It promises a specific calculated pension payout for life based on your salary and service years. It's meant to provide income security.
Right, a guaranteed income stream.
But it's funded by a defined contribution, that 8.33% employer share, and critically, that contribution is capped at the 15,000 rupee ceiling. So you have a fixed promise on the way out, funded by a limited amount coming in.
And why is that a problem long term?
Well, think about it. People are living longer now than they were in 1995 when the scheme started. Longevity increases the payout period. Plus, if wage inflation consistently outruns the investment returns the EPS fund can generate, that capped inflow of 1,250 rupees per person might simply not be enough over time to cover the defined benefit promises being made.
So there's a systemic risk of the fund not being able to meet its obligations.
Potentially, yes. There's a long-term solvency risk that ultimately the central government would have to step in and cover. It relies heavily on actuarial assumptions holding true.
Okay, so given that capped funding, how is the actual monthly pension calculated when someone retires? What's the formula?
It's based on two main things. First, your pensionable salary. This is calculated as the average monthly pay you earned during the last 60 months. That's 5 years right before you retired or left service. But again, this average salary is capped at the 15,000 rupee ceiling for the calculation.
Even if you were earning much more.
Even if you were earning lakhs. For the standard calculation, only the average up to 15K counts. Second factor is your pensionable service, the total number of years you contributed to the EPS.
How's that calculated?
It's usually rounded up to the nearest year. So if you work for, say, 25 years and 7 months, it typically gets rounded up to 26 years for the pension formula.
And these two factors, capped salary and service years, are put into a formula.
Yeah, they're multiplied together, usually along with a statutory factor, often around 170th, to arrive at your lifelong monthly pension amount.
Right. This leads us directly into that huge Supreme Court judgment and the whole saga of the higher pension option, or pension on higher wages, PUHW. This created a massive stir, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It was a landmark decision. It basically forced a reckoning for both employers and potentially millions of employees. The Supreme Court ruled that eligible members, essentially those who joined before September 2014 and were contributing PF on salaries higher than the ceiling, but had their EPS contributions capped, had to be given a one-time option.
An option to do what?
An option to apply to have their pension calculated based on their actual uncapped salary, not just the 15,000 ceiling.
That sounds great. A much higher pension, potentially. What's the catch?
The catch is enormous. It comes at a very, very steep price, paid directly from the employee's own savings.
How so?
To get this higher pension, the member has to agree to retrospectively transfer funds out of their accumulated EPF lump sum account and into the EPS pension fund.
Transfer how much?
They have to transfer the difference between the 8.33% contribution that should have gone to EPS based on their actual higher salary and the capped amount that actually went in, the 1,250 per month. And this difference has to be transferred for their entire service history, plus accumulated interest as calculated by the EPFO.
Wow. So let me get this straight. You opt for a higher monthly pension, potentially much higher,
Correct.
but the cost is you have to drain potentially a massive chunk, maybe even all, of your tax-free inheritable EPF savings to fund it retrospectively.
That's exactly the trade-off. You're essentially sacrificing capital accumulation, your lump sum, for a higher guaranteed annuity income, your monthly pension.
That's a monumental decision for an individual to make.
Huge. It requires real financial literacy. Is the higher lifelong pension worth giving up that big nest egg you could use for, say, buying a house, children's education, or major medical expenses? For someone nearing retirement needing flexibility, it might be a terrible deal. For someone younger with decades to go, maybe it looks attractive. But it forced millions into very complex personal financial planning. And the administrative burden on the EPFO to process these applications was immense.
And looking ahead, there's still debate about the basic adequacy of the EPS, right? Particularly the minimum pension.
Yes, that's an ongoing issue. The minimum pension guaranteed under the scheme has been stuck at just 1,000 rupees per month since way back in 2014.
Which is clearly not enough to live on today.
Grossly inadequate, especially with inflation. So the Central Board of Trustees, the CBT, which governs the EPFO, has been seriously discussing raising this floor. Proposals for 2,500 rupees, maybe even more, have been debated.
But any significant increase runs into that funding problem again.
Exactly. Raising a minimum benefit puts more pressure on the fund's finances. Given the capped contribution structure, a substantial hike would almost certainly require increased financial support, likely direct budgetary allocation from the government, to ensure the scheme remains solvent.
Okay, let's switch focus to the technology.
Yeah.
This is where things are really changing on the ground for employers. You mentioned the electronic challenge come return system, the ECR, getting a major overhaul, ECR 3.0. This sounds like the heart of the new compliance regime.
It absolutely is. This is the engine driving that paradigm shift we talked about. Forget the old ways of file now, figure out corrections later. The new ECR 3.0, which is expected to be fully live for the wage month of September 2025, it's proactive. It acts like a strict digital gatekeeper.
A gatekeeper? How so? What does it guard against?
It guards against bad data. The core change is that you cannot make your monthly PF payment until your data passes a rigorous digital audit first.
So you have to get the data right before you can even generate the payment instruction.
Precisely. The process under ECR 3.0 is very sequential and strict. Step 1. Employer uploads the ECR file with all the employee wage and contribution details for the month. Step 2. The EPFO system runs a battery of automated validation checks on that file. Step 3. The employer must then review the validated data and formally approve it online, essentially locking it in. Step 4. Only if that ECR file passes all checks and gets approved can the system generate the payment challenge.
No approval, no challenge, no payment.
You got it. You simply cannot pay against faulty or incomplete data anymore.
And these validation checks, they're pretty thorough. Not just checking if the file format is okay.
Oh, much deeper than that. It's an instant compliance audit. The system automatically checks for things like, are the universal account numbers, UANs, valid and active? Is the KYC information like Aadhaar, PAN, bank details properly linked and verified? Are you trying to make EPS contributions for employees who aren't eligible, like those high earners who joined after September 2014?
Right, they're not eligible for the pension scheme under the current rules.
Yep. Correct. The system flags all these kinds of substantive errors. And here's the really critical part, the domino effect.
What's that?
If there's an error in the data for even one single employee in that file,
Just one.
the entire ECR submission for that month gets blocked. It fails validation, which means the payment challenge cannot be generated, which means the contribution for all employees in that company gets delayed.
Wow. So one small data entry mistake for, say, a new hire could hold up the PF payment for hundreds, even thousands of employees.
Exactly. The pressure on HR and payroll teams to ensure 100% data accuracy before upload is now immense. A single error can trigger delays and consequently penalties for the entire organization.
And you mentioned penalties earlier. The system deals with those automatically too.
Immediately and automatically. If the delay caused by data errors means you miss the payment deadline, which is the 15th of the following month, the system, once you finally get the data approved and generate the challenge, will automatically calculate the interest due under Section 7Q and any damages under Section 14B.
And includes it right there on the bill.
Right there on the payment challenge. There's no negotiation, no waiting for a demand notice later. The financial consequence of the delay is calculated and presented upfront. It makes the risk immediate and unavoidable.
What about making corrections? If you upload, approve, and even pay, but then realize there was a mistake, how does ECR 3.0 handle that?
It introduces more structure around corrections. There are specific mechanisms. You have a supplementary return that's used if you completely missed an employee in the original filing. You're adding someone new for that month.
Okay, for omissions, what about errors in the original data?
For that, there's a revised return. You use this to correct wage figures or contribution amounts for employees who are already included. But there's a very important restriction here.
Which is?
If you need to revise a contribution downwards, let's say you accidentally overreported someone's basic wage and paid too much PF, you can only make that downward revision using the revised return mechanism before the payment for that specific employee has actually been processed and remitted to the EPFO.
So once the money's gone, you can't just claw it back easily through a revised return.
Correct. Once payment is made, reducing a contribution becomes a much more complex offline process, likely involving justification and manual intervention. It strongly incentivizes getting it right the first time. ##B, the closed-loop ecosystem and member empowerment.
This entire digital system seems to absolutely depend on data integrity. And the linchpin for that seems to be the UAN, the Universal Account Number.
Absolutely. The UAN is the individual's portable, lifelong identifier within the whole Social Security system. It links everything together. So the employer's responsibility now goes way beyond just generating a UAN.
What else do they need to ensure?
They have a critical role in KYC governance. That means ensuring the employee's UAN is properly linked or seeded and then verified with their core identity documents, a Aadhaar, PAN card, and crucially, their bank account details.
Why is that so critical now?
Because mismatches or incomplete KYC can actually block the ECR validation process we just talked about. If the system sees a UAN without verified KYC, it might flag it as an error, potentially halting the entire contribution process. It's become an upstream requirement for downstream compliance.
Interesting. And beyond the employer side, our sources suggest the EPFO is actively trying to empower the members themselves, maybe reducing reliance on the employer as the middleman.
That's a definite trend. It's about making the system more efficient, transparent, and member-centric, cutting out unnecessary bureaucratic steps often involving the employer.
What are some examples of this?
A really significant one is the Centralized Pension Payment System, or CPPS. This came into effect around January 2025.
CPPS?
Yeah.
What problem does that solve for pensioners?
Think about the old system. If you retired while working in, say, Bangalore, your pension payment order, PPO, was tied to the EPFO regional office there. Now, what if you decide to move to your hometown in, say, West Bengal after retirement?
You'd have to get your pension file transferred.
Exactly. You'd have to go through a potentially long and frustrating process of applying to transfer your PPO from the Bangalore office to the relevant office in West Bengal. This often caused delays, interruptions in getting your monthly pension, which is critical income.
So CPPS fixes that.
Completely. It centralizes the entire pension disbursement process. Doesn't matter where you're retired from or where you live now in India. The pension is paid out from a single central system linked to your bank account. You move. Your pension follows you seamlessly. No transfers needed.
That's a huge quality of life improvement for retirees. What about for people still working, maybe changing jobs? Transferring PF balances used to be a pain too.
It could be, yes. It often required chasing approvals from both your old employer and your new one using Form 13. That could be slow.
And now?
Now, for members whose UAN is fully linked and verified with Aadhaar, the online transfer process using Form 13 is much smoother. In many cases, the transfer can be processed directly by the EPFO system based on the member's request, without needing explicit digital or physical sign-off from the previous employer.
So more control for the employee over their own funds and service history.
Exactly. It removes a major administrative bottleneck and empowers the employee to ensure their service continuity when they switch jobs.
You also mentioned something about transparency with Annexure K. What's that?
Annexure K is essentially the detailed statement that shows the transfer of PF funds and service history when an employee moves from one company's PF account or trust to another. Historically, it wasn't always easy for the employee to see this.
And the change.
Since around September 2025, the EPFO has made Annexure K directly viewable and downloadable by the member through their online portal.
So I can log in and see exactly how my service years and funds have moved between jobs.
Yes, it puts that critical information directly in your hands. You can verify it's correct, check for any gaps or discrepancies in your service history, and if there's an issue, you can raise it directly with the EPFO. It increases accountability all around.
And one more simplification making claims, online claims.
Yeah, this was a small but significant change. Previously, when you submitted an online claim for PF withdrawal or advance, you often had to upload a scanned image of your bank check leaf or passbook front page as proof of your bank account.
Right, I remember that being fiddly, getting a clear scan.
Exactly. And failure to upload a clear image was a major reason for claim rejections. Now, that requirement has been removed if your bank KYC details linked to your UAN have already been digitally verified by the bank itself and also approved by your current employer in the system.
So if the system already has trusted, verified bank details.
They don't need the scanned image anymore. It simplifies the claim process, speeds it up, and significantly reduces rejections based on poor documentation. It relies on the upstream data purity being maintained by the employer and the bank. Hashtag tag 3, penalties, enforcement, and the cost of impeccable timeliness.
Okay, this whole digital ecosystem, the gatekeeper ECR, the automated checks, it means that missing the deadline, the 15th of the following month, has immediate consequences. The penalties are automatic. Let's dissect those penalties again. First, Section 7Q.
All right. Section 7Q is interest. Think of it as compensation, not punishment. It's mandatory, it's non-waivable, and it's calculated as simple interest at 12% per annum on the amount that was paid late.
Calculated from when to when?
From the due date, the 15th, right up until the date the payment is actually credited. It accrues daily. The logic is to make the fund whole for the investment income it lost because the money wasn't there on time. It also compensates the employee's account for the lost compounding.
Okay, 12% simple interest, purely compensatory.
Right.
Now, the second penalty, Section 14B, that's the one designed to sting, right? The damages. And there was a big change here recently, June 2024.
A very significant change, yes. The old system for Section 14B damages was tiered. It depended on how long the delay was. Short delays, maybe up to 2 months, attracted a lower penalty rate, like 5% per annum. Longer delays, say over 6 months, could push the penalty up to 15%, 20%, even 25% per annum. It escalated.
And the new system.
The new regulation, effective June 14th, 2024, scrapped that tiered structure completely. It introduced a uniform flat rate for damages, 1% per month.
1% per month. So that translates to...
It translates to a fixed 12% per annum, irrespective of the length of the delay beyond the due date.
Okay, hang on. A flat 12% per year. The old system went up to 25% for long delays. So does this new flat rate actually mean it's less punitive for employers now? Is it a relief?
That's the crucial question. And the answer is generally no, it's not a relief, especially not for minor or technical delays. It seems counterintuitive, but think about it.
Okay.
While the maximum potential rate came down from 25% to 12%, the rate for short-term delays went up dramatically. Under the old rules, if you were, say, 1 month late, the damage was only 5% per annum. Now, even if you're just 1 day late past the 15th, you're instantly hit with the full 12% per annum rate, calculated for the delay period, of course, but at that high annual rate.
So the penalty for being just a little bit late has effectively more than doubled.
Exactly. It's much harsher for those short, often unintentional delays, perhaps caused by process glitches or bank holidays or, as we discussed, ECR validation issues. The message from the EPFO is crystal clear. Zero tolerance for missing the deadline. The focus has shifted from punishing prolonged willful default, though that's still penalized, to enforcing absolute monthly timeliness. The 15th is the deadline, period.
It really underscores the need for that pre-payroll audit you mentioned. You can't afford to discover problems on the 14th.
Absolutely not. And remember the legal backing here. The Supreme Court has consistently held that levying these Section 14B damages is a civil liability. You don't need to prove mens rea a guilty mind or criminal intent.
Just the fact that you defaulted is enough.
The mere fact of default is sufficient. You were late, you pay the damages, End of story.
We've talked about the penalties for being late. What about the broader audit process? Is it still the classic scenario of an inspector knocking on your door unexpectedly?
That image is largely outdated now. The EPFO has moved towards a much more technology-driven, risk-based approach for enforcement. They have a standard operating procedure, often referred to as the nudge and watch strategy.
Nudge and watch.
Yeah.
Sounds less confrontational.
That's the idea. It's designed to be more efficient, less arbitrary, and to use data intelligence to focus resources where they're needed most. It's essentially a 3-step escalation process.
Okay, what's step 1? The nudge.
Step 1 is automated desk review and nudging. The EPFO's IT systems are constantly analyzing the ECR data being filed, looking for patterns and anomalies.
Like what sort of anomalies?
Maybe a company suddenly reports a drastic drop in the number of employees they're paying PF for without any explanation, or the average wage contribution per employee suddenly plunges compared to their historical data. Or maybe they just haven't filed the ECR at all for a month.
And if the system flags something?
It triggers automated communications, usually emails or SMS messages sent directly to the registered contact person at the company. These are the nudges. They basically say, hey, we noticed this potential issue. Please check your records and take corrective action, aiming for voluntary compliance first.
Okay, so a gentle reminder. What if the employer ignores the nudge or doesn't fix the issue?
Then it escalates to step 2, e-verification. If the system sees that the nudges haven't resulted in compliance within a set time frame, it triggers a formal e-verification request. This isn't just an email anymore. It's a formal notification sent through the employer's official online portal on the EPFO site.
And this requires a formal response.
Yes. The employer typically has to log in, acknowledge the notice, and then formally respond, either by remitting the dues identified or by providing a justification with supporting documents if they believe there's no default, maybe explaining a seasonal workforce change or providing proof of closure if applicable.
So still digital, still remote. When does the physical inspection, step 3, actually happen?
Step 3, the physical inspection, is now positioned as the final resort. It's generally reserved for cases where the employer has persistently ignored both the automated nudges and the formal e-verification requests, or sometimes for very complex cases where verifying physical records like attendance registers, wage slips, company ledgers is deemed essential on-site.
And who decides which companies get physically inspected? Is it still up to the local inspector?
Largely no. To ensure objectivity and minimize arbitrary visits, the list of establishments selected for physical inspection is supposed to be generated primarily through a centralized, computerized system. This system uses objective, risk-based criteria like the severity of the potential default, the history of noncompliance, the amount involved. It aims to focus those resource-intensive physical inspections on the highest risk, most recalcitrant cases, rather than random checks.
That sounds more targeted. Now, there's one type of compliance failure that goes beyond just interest and damages, right?
Yeah.
Something that can actually lead to criminal charges.
Yes, and this is the absolute most serious category of default. It's when an employer deducts the employee's 12% share from their salary,
Takes the money out of their pay packet.
but then fails to deposit that money with the EPFO. They essentially pocket the employee's contribution or divert it for other business purposes.
That's not just a civil matter anymore.
No, that's considered a criminal breach of trust. Under the Indian Penal Code, specifically sections 406 and 409, this is a cognizable offense. It can lead to the EPFO filing a police complaint, resulting in FIRs, potential prosecution, fines, and even imprisonment for the responsible company officials. The employee's contribution is treated as sacrosanct money held in trust by the employer. Misappropriating it is a very serious crime. #tag the high-stakes world of exempted trusts and proactive compliance.
We focused mainly on unexempted establishments that pay directly to the EPFO. But some large organizations run their own private provident fund trusts, right? They get an exemption under Section 17.
That's correct. Very large, stable organizations can apply for an exemption, allowing them to manage the EPF component, the savings part, for their employees internally through their own trust.
What's the benefit for them? More control, maybe potentially higher returns.
Potentially, yes. More control over investments, potentially tailoring services. But it comes with significant responsibilities and risks. The fundamental condition for getting and keeping that exemption under Section 17 is that the benefits offered by the private trust must, on the whole, be not less favorable than what the employees would get under the main EPFO statutory schemes.
So they have to match or beat the EPFO.
Essentially, yes. And critically, even if they manage the EPF part themselves, they still have to contribute the employer's and employees' share for the pension scheme, EPS, and the insurance scheme, EDLI, directly to the central EPFO. The exemption only covers the EPF savings management.
And running this private trust turns the employer into a fiduciary with serious legal duties.
Absolutely. They take on significant fiduciary duties and the associated risks. One of the biggest is the interest rate guarantee.
What does that involve?
Every year, the EPFO declares an official interest rate for EPF accumulations. For the fiscal year 2024-25, it's 8.25%. The private exempted trust must declare a rate for its members that is equal to, or importantly, higher than that EPFO rate.
They have to match or beat it every year. What if their trust's investments don't perform well enough to generate that return?
Tough luck for the employer. If the trust's earnings are deficient, if they can't afford to pay the declared rate, which must be at least the EPFO rate, the employer company is legally obligated to make up the entire shortfall immediately using its own corporate funds. They guarantee the return regardless of market performance.
That's a huge financial risk, especially in volatile markets.
It certainly is. And their hands are tied on investments too. They can't just chase high returns with risky assets.
Why not?
Because the funds held by the exempted trust must be invested strictly according to a very specific conservative investment pattern prescribed by the central government. Any deviation from this pattern is a serious compliance violation.
And they also have service standards to meet.
Yes, they need to process employee claims for withdrawals, advances, and final settlements within stipulated timelines, typically around 20 days. They can't be slower than the main EPFO.
It sounds like the oversight on these trusts is getting tighter as well. You mentioned new SOPs from 2023.
Very much tighter. The late 2023 standard operating procedures introduced a much more structured and stringent priority matrix for monitoring violations by exempted trusts. It makes the process less subjective.
And it defines specific triggers for serious action.
Yes, particularly concerning for these trusts are what the SOPs call Category A violations. These are the most serious breaches.
What's an example of a Category A violation?
The most striking one is if the trust suffers financial losses for 3 consecutive financial years. If their audited accounts show losses 3 years running,
Then what?
it automatically triggers a mandatory process for the cancellation of the establishment's exemption. The regulatory officer doesn't have much discretion left. 3 years of losses basically means you lose your license to operate the private trust.
Wow. That really raises the stakes for financial management and investment diligence within these trusts.
Absolutely. Impeccable financial health, strict adherence to the investment pattern, timely compliance. These are no longer just best practices, they're survival requirements for exempted trusts. The overall risk-reward balance of maintaining a private trust has definitely shifted, making it less attractive for some.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together, the digital shift with ECR 3.0, the automated penalties, the universality test for basic wages, the tighter oversight on trusts, what's the big takeaway? What's the new role for the employer in this landscape?
The role has fundamentally transformed. Our sources consistently point to this. The employer is no longer just a procedural intermediary shuffling papers or payments. They are now effectively a data fiduciary.
A data fiduciary, meaning they have a duty of care over the accuracy and integrity of employee data.
Precisely. The entire system, the automated validations, the seamless member services like CPPS or online transfers, the correct calculation of benefits, it all rests on the assumption that the source data provided by the employer is 100% accurate right from the very beginning.
You can't fix bad data downstream easily anymore.
Exactly. Garbage in, garbage out. But now garbage in means the system stops and penalties start. So the focus has to shift entirely to proactive upstream data management.
So what are the practical strategic recommendations for employers listening? How do they live up to this data fiduciary role and manage the risks?
First and foremost, technology integration is key. You need a robust HRMS or payroll system that acts as the single definitive source of truth for all employee master data, wage details, joining dates, exit dates, everything.
And this system needs to talk to the ECR process.
Seamlessly. Ideally, your ECR file should be generated directly from this verified HRM's payroll data, minimizing manual data entry or spreadsheet juggling, which is where errors creep in.
Okay, get the tech right. What else? Process changes.
Absolutely critical is building in a mandatory pre-payroll audit every single month. Before you finalize the payroll, before you even think about generating the ECR file, someone needs to perform checks.
What kind of checks?
Verifying the accuracy of any wage changes, checking UAN status and KYC linkage for all new joiners, confirming correct exit dates and reasons for employees who've left. You need to catch potential ECR validation errors internally before they hit the EPFO system and halt everything.
That makes sense. Preempt the problems. What about contract labor? Employers are often still liable for their PF, right?
Yes, that's a huge area of risk often overlooked. Under the Act, the principal employer, the company hiring the contractor, generally bears the ultimate legal liability if the contractor defaults on PF contributions for the contract workers placed with them. You can't just wash your hands of it.
So how does the principal employer manage that risk?
You need rigorous contractor compliance management. A best practice is implementing a verification before payment system before you release the monthly payment to your contractor for their services.
You check their homework.
Essentially, yes. You require them to provide proof that they have successfully filed their ECR for the workers supplied to you, and crucially, proof that they have remitted the corresponding PF contributions to the EPFO for that month. Audit their compliance before you pay their invoice.
That puts the onus back on the contractor. Good idea. And finally, some basic housekeeping that can prevent headaches later.
2 simple but vital things. 1, KYC and UAN. Make UAN generation or linking on HOS seating and KYC verification a mandatory non-negotiable part of your employee onboarding process. Day 1 stuff. Don't let it drag on. It prevents so many downstream issues with ECR validation and claim processing.
And the second thing?
Nominations. Ensure every single employee fills out and submits Form 2, the nomination form, which details who should receive their PF and insurance benefits if they pass away. Keep these updated. Sounds basic, but having a clear, valid nomination on file makes the death claim settlement process infinitely smoother and faster for the grieving family. It's a compassionate duty as much as an administrative one. #outro.
So if we synthesize everything we've discussed today, the core message seems to be this. The EPFO's concerted push towards a centralized, digitized ecosystem, ECR 3.0, acting as that digital gatekeeper, CPPS streamlining pensions, penalties becoming instant and automated. It's created, well, you could almost call it a digital panopticon for compliance.
That's a strong image, but yeah, it captures the feeling. Everything is visible, tracked, and reacted to by the system in near real time. Compliance isn't about retrospective box ticking anymore. It's about guaranteeing data perfection at the source, month after month.
The wiggle room's gone. The we'll sort it out later approach is finished.
Completely finished. Errors that might have just caused some administrative back and forth in the past now bring the entire monthly compliance process to a screeching halt and trigger immediate calculated financial penalties, that 12% interest under 7Q, the new flat 12% annual rate for damages under 14B. The technology itself is now the primary enforcement tool.
So for you listening, whether you're a business owner, running payroll, or managing compliance, what's the bottom line here?
Look, the biggest, most potentially explosive financial risk-facing employers today might not actually be accidentally paying 3 days late next month. The real ticking time bomb, based on everything we've seen, is the potential for a retrospective re-audit of your entire salary structure going back years.
Based on that universality test for basic wages we discussed.
Exactly. If those special allowances or other components you've been paying regularly and universally get reclassified as basic wages during an audit, you could suddenly be facing massive, unbudgeted demands for shortfalls, interest, and damages that dwarf any penalty for simple lateness. That legal interpretation risk is profound.
So the call to action is clear. Audit your salary structure now. Understand your definitions. Ensure your data governance is meticulous today. Because waiting could mean facing potentially crippling liabilities tomorrow.
Precisely. Your HR and payroll strategy isn't just an operational function anymore. It's a fundamental pillar of your company's financial risk management framework.
Absolutely. A crucial shift in perspective.
Indeed. And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with, building on this theme of precision and timeliness. The EPFO, as part of its move towards greater transparency and member benefit, is now generally required to credit interest to a member's PF account right up until the actual date their claim is settled. They're closing that old gap where you lost interest during the claim processing time.
Okay.
So if the statutory body, the EPFO itself, is being held to this microscopic standard of ensuring members get every single day's worth of financial benefit, think about the pressure that enhanced focus on speed and precision puts back onto private exempted trusts and even internal HR departments. They'll need to be incredibly efficient in processing claims and advances themselves to ensure they continue to meet that crucial, not less favorable condition compared to the increasingly efficient EPFO. The digital transformation keeps raising the bar for everyone.
A fascinating point. The drive for efficiency creates new pressures across the board. A really insightful look into a complex and rapidly evolving area. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive.